Here's something that probably sounds familiar. Two people start the exact same fast on the exact same day. One of them feels sharp, calm, almost surprisingly good. The other is white-knuckling it through a pounding headache, wobbly legs, and a brain that refuses to string two thoughts together. Same fast. Completely different experience. So what's actually going on there? Because if fasting were purely about willpower or calorie restriction, both of those people should feel roughly the same. But they don't. And the reason why has almost nothing to do with hunger and almost everything to do with what's happening inside the body the moment food stops coming in. When you eat, your body releases insulin. That's the signal that says nutrients are arriving. Store what you don't need right now, keep everything running in fed mode. But when you stop eating, insulin drops. And that drop sets off a chain reaction that most people never hear about when they first get into fasting. One of the first things that changes is how your kidneys behave. Under normal conditions with insulin circulating, your kidneys hold onto sodium. They're conservative with it. But when insulin falls, the kidneys shift gears. They start excreting sodium at a much faster rate. And here's why that matters so much. Where sodium goes, water follows. It's just how the body works. Sodium and water are tied together, and when the kidneys start releasing sodium, they release fluid right along with it. So in those first hours and first couple of days of a fast, you might notice you're running to the bathroom more than usual. And the common explanation people reach for is that they're losing water weight. That's technically true, but it's incomplete in a way that causes a lot of problems. Because that fluid you're losing isn't just water, it's sodium-rich fluid. It's electrolyte-rich fluid. And if you're not replacing any of it, you're not just getting lighter. You're quietly draining the minerals your body needs to function. Now zoom in for a second on what electrolytes actually do, because it's easy to think of them as a sports drink ingredient and leave it at that. But sodium, potassium, and magnesium are doing some of the most fundamental work in your entire body. They're what allow electrical signals to fire across your nerves. They're what make your muscles contract and then relax properly, including your heart muscle. They regulate blood pressure. They control how water moves between your cells and your bloodstream. These aren't minor background tasks. These are the things that have to work right for you to feel like a human being. So when fasting drives insulin down and the kidneys start flushing sodium and fluid starts shifting around inside the body, and none of those electrolytes are being replaced through food, you get a very predictable set of symptoms. Your head starts to pound. You stand up too fast and the room tilts. Your energy craters in a way that feels different from normal tiredness, more hollow, more relentless. Your thinking gets slow and foggy, like you're trying to read through wax paper. Your muscles might cramp or feel weak. Some people get heart palpitations that genuinely scare them, and almost all of them assume that fasting is just supposed to feel this way, that it's detox, that it's their body adjusting, that they just need to push through. But here's the thing. A lot of those symptoms aren't really fasting symptoms at all. They're electrolyte depletion symptoms. The fasting created the conditions for the depletion, but the suffering itself is coming from the imbalance, not from the absence of food. That's a really important distinction because it means most of those problems are fixable, not by eating, but by understanding what your body is actually losing and giving it back in the right form. This is the core of what so many people miss when they start fasting. They focus entirely on what they're not putting in, and they completely overlook what the body is quietly pushing out. The fast changes the rules, insulin drops, the kidneys behave differently, fluid and minerals move in ways they don't during normal eating. And once you understand that shift, everything about managing a fast starts to make a lot more sense. So let's talk about what you actually do with that information, because knowing your electrolytes are draining is one thing. Knowing how to keep them in balance without breaking your fast or overdoing it in the opposite direction is where it gets practical. The three you really need to pay attention to are sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Sodium is the most urgent one, especially in the early days of a fast, because it's what the kidneys are dumping most aggressively when insulin drops. Potassium follows closely behind, partly because it works in tandem with sodium to regulate fluid balance and nerve signaling. And magnesium tends to be the quiet one that people overlook until they're lying awake with leg cramps at 2 in the morning, or feeling a low-grade anxiety that they can't quite explain. All three matter, but sodium usually needs the most attention first and the most consistent attention throughout. For practical management, the approach depends a little on what kind of fast you're doing. If you're doing intermittent fasting with a daily eating window, you have a real advantage because you can load up on electrolytes through whole food sources during your meals. Think salty foods, leafy greens, nuts, seeds, avocado, quality animal proteins. A lot of your needs can be covered just by eating intentionally during that window. But if your fast extends beyond a day, or if you're doing longer multi-day fasts, you need to be more deliberate during the fasted hours themselves. A pinch of quality salt in water is one of the simplest tools available. Bone broth is another, and it has the added benefit of minerals plus a small amount of protein that some people find settling without knocking them fully out of a fasted state. Mineral water can contribute, especially varieties naturally high in magnesium. And there are electrolyte powders and mixes designed specifically for fasting that contain no sugar and no calories, which work well if you want something that covers more than just sodium. Here's where individual variation matters a lot, though. Your electrolyte needs during a fast are not fixed. They shift based on how long you're fasting, how much you're sweating, whether you're exercising, whether you're in heat, whether you're drinking a lot of caffeine, and whether you're also eating low carb outside of your fasting window. Caffeine is a diuretic, which means it pulls more fluid and sodium out. Exercise and heat push losses even higher through sweat. And if you're already eating low carb when you're not fasting, you've probably already been running leaner on electrolytes to begin with, which means your baseline is lower before the fast even starts. None of this means fasting is dangerous. It just means you have to factor in your actual context, not a generic template. Now, something worth being direct about. There's a version of overcorrection that causes its own problems. Chugging enormous amounts of plain water all day in an attempt to stay hydrated can actually dilute sodium levels further, which makes things worse, not better. And aggressively supplementing electrolytes without paying attention to balance, particularly loading up on potassium or magnesium beyond what you actually need, can create its own issues. The goal isn't maximum electrolytes. The goal is balance. Enough sodium to keep the kidneys from over-excreting fluid. Enough potassium and magnesium to keep nerves and muscles functioning cleanly. And water intake that's proportional to your actual thirst and output, not just a number you read somewhere. As for knowing when something is more serious than normal fasting adjustment, a mild headache in the first day or two, some light fatigue, maybe a little fogginess as the body shifts fuel sources, that's normal territory. But a headache that intensifies rather than improves when you add salt and water, significant heart palpitations that don't pass quickly, genuine muscle weakness, or feeling genuinely disoriented. Those are signs to take seriously, not push through. The takeaway is straightforward. Electrolytes are not optional fasting support. They are a core part of how a fast functions in your body. The people who fast well are almost always the ones who treat electrolyte management the same way they treat their fasting window itself, intentionally, consistently, and adjusted to fit their actual life. Get that part right, and fasting stops being something you survive and starts being something that actually works.